Well, looks like I'm live here. Trying it for the first time here on YouTube. Guess I'll wait till a few people get here. Well, I see one person, two people are here. Um, I'll wait till there's a few more, I suppose. Kind of new to this whole live YouTube thing. Well, I guess there's a few people here, only two, but I guess go ahead and start, I suppose. Well, this is the Big Rant Show. Thanks for joining me. Um, um, hey, I'm doing pretty good. How are you? Not a lot going on today. It doesn't seem like around here, but just figured I'd go through a few pieces of news from the last week that didn't seem like they got covered by the mainstream media much. Um, and so I think I'm going to try and do this every week on Sundays. I think sometime in the morning. Um, but I guess we'll see how it goes. If anyone watches later or whatever, we'll see what happens. I suppose. Anyhow, let's get started. I suppose with yesterday's events, which of course was the March for Our Lives put together by the students down there in Parkland. It ended up some hundreds of thousands of people actually showed up to these events across the country. Not to mention all the ones that showed up in Washington D.C. yesterday with the kids that were there from Parkland, and they had some other people there that were kids when the Sandy Hook thing took place. I thought it was really well done. Look, it was rather peaceful. We've had some problems with protests in the past where they did not turn out so peaceful, but the kids that were there, they definitely, they had a purpose. They weren't there just to start trouble, and a lot of people were down on them, like that Tommy Loren, that I guess she works over at Fox News now. Used to work for the Blaze. Just put out tweets that are talking about how these kids basically don't know what they're doing and that they need that all it is some giant, basically made like it was some giant NRA attack protest or something. And obviously, if that's the case, people aren't listening. Because this is more than just gun rights. This is more than just about people losing gun rights or people trying to take your guns away, which they said multiple times that they're not trying to take everyone's guns away. They're just trying to let people know what the heck's what's going on in the schools and how it needs to stop. And I think more than anybody, these people have a legit gripe. I mean, these are kids that have lived through it. These are people that have been shot at in their schools and some of the places they're supposed to be the safest. But unfortunately, this day and age, it doesn't seem like that's the case. So change needs to be made. But I think one of the biggest things I saw yesterday was kind of poignant, I suppose, and I really thought it kind of struck me pretty hard, I suppose, I guess you could say. And that was Emma Gonzalez. Of course, Emma Gonzalez was the one that gave the "We Call BS" speech in the weeks following the shooting at Parkland, Florida. And of course, she's been, singled out by a few different politicians, mainly one up in Maine who decided to call her names and such. And he's since had to resign from what he was doing. And he's no longer running for office because who's going to vote for somebody that sits there and attacks a kid like that man did? And I'm not going to sit here and repeat what he said, but it was just completely wrong. I've already gone over this in another video that I did the other day. But she gave a speech. She came out and she was talking, and she went through the list of the people that were killed in Parkland, Florida. Her friends and co-students there that were shot to death, right there as she and her other students were trying to survive. And she talked about how it took only 6 minutes and 20 seconds for him to kill those 17 people. And she gave a good speech about it, and she went through and talked about how all these people, they'll never be able to do the things that they were doing before. And then after she was done reading their names, she sat there in silence until the 6 minutes and 20 seconds were up. And then she left with some parting words. And if you ask me, it was I guess you could say silence heard around the world. It's kind of like, because that silence was deafening, and it had a point. And I think she said more with that silence than she probably could have with anything else she said. But at the end of everything, she had something left to say. One of the last things she had to say was, "You have to fight. You have to fight for your lives before it's someone else's job." And that right there, that kind of sums up the entire thing, doesn't it? That we need to do something, and these kids are having to take it upon themselves to force change because they don't feel safe. Kids don't feel safe, and if they don't feel safe in school, how are they supposed to learn? Gun violence is a pervasive problem. They had a girl there from Chicago who witnessed a robbery and had a gun pointed in her face simply for being there at the wrong time. And she lives with that every day. You've got lots of people that were out there at these things. Jimmy Fallon said he would be out at the Washington, D.C. rally. I didn't actually see any video of him there, but Paul McCartney was there. And of course, Beatles singer, or I guess lead singer of the Beatles, John Lennon, was of course killed by a person with a gun. So I think that he was there in support of these, trying to support the changes. What I thought was crazy is I heard that these protests went round the world. That they weren't just here in the U.S. There were people in Paris and other countries, and over in France and other nations across the globe supporting the American kids here trying to make change. And if you ask me, that's just amazing that there are people across the globe showing solidarity with our children here in America. Speaking of gun violence, and I don't want that to be the whole topic of this particular live stream, and I'm going to do my best not to keep it that, to not have it be the full story, because I have a few other topics I'd like to get to. But Jalen Wylie, 16, from Maryland, was shot the other day, and her family took her off life support the other day. She was shot at school by apparently a former boyfriend who decided that he would shoot her because she didn't want to date him anymore. Now, as a guy that didn't do a whole lot of dating in elementary school, junior high, high school, any of that stuff, I didn't do a whole lot of dating. But I do understand that, you get upset, someone no longer wants to hang out with you, no longer be your girlfriend, whatever. It's sad. I understand that. But to bring a gun to school and shoot them in the head simply because you don't like the fact they no longer want to hang out with you, that's some of the worst thinking I've ever heard in my life. I'm a rather emotional person. I was extremely emotional in high school and junior high. Had a lot of issues, and I still never took a gun to school to shoot anybody. I was wronged by people all the time. I was bullied. I had girls laugh at me. I had girls treat me like crap all the time. But I never considered taking a firearm to school to kill them. So now this family, because of this jackass of a teenager, a family is without their daughter. And kids had to sit there and see that happen right in front of them. And a 14-year-old boy, of course, was shot and injured. He was able to be discharged, after going to the hospital for a little bit. But Jalen Wylie will not be going home to her family ever again. She will never be going to school again. She won't be going to college. She won't be doing whatever her life dreams were. Her life is no longer in front of her. And they're having to bury their daughter. And that right there is the whole point to the March for Our Lives. These kids are scared. They don't know they don't know what to do because the adults won't do anything. And fortunately for the adults, the kids will be the change. They will change. They will make change here in America. And guess what? They vote. They vote in the very near future. Many of those people, you got juniors, seniors, sophomores, those people, some of them aren't very far from voting age. So I hope that our Congress will act, our president will act to do something to help these kids out. And of course, they've done some stuff to, Florida did some stuff to arm teachers. I don't think that's really going to help the situation, but at least the state legislature in Florida is trying to do something. Unlike our Congress, who refuses to do a damn thing. Now, this takes me on to some stuff that happened here at YouTube, something I don't really necessarily agree with, and some of it I do. Of course, YouTube banned video games this week, or not video games, but videos that had gun sales in them, or sales of gun accessories, bump stocks, and things like that. Now, I support the idea of them not wanting people to sell firearms and firearm accessories, in their YouTube videos. They have perfectly legit reason to do that. And I understand. I get that. But the way they wrote it and the way they put it out is it's very vague. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense in some ways. I mean, it's very clear that they don't want people selling stuff, guns and accessories in their videos through links or whatever. And that's okay. But it's written in a way that it could go after people, and YouTubers that really, they don't depict violence or anything. They don't sell anything, but they're just enthusiasts that show people how firearms work. I've actually learned a lot about firearms through YouTube because I'm not a gun nut. I'm not someone that likes guns. I don't care for guns. I don't really care for them to be around me. But in order to have legitimate arguments, for gun regulations, you have to know how they work. You have to be able to understand where these other people are coming from when they lose their mind, when you mispronounce something or you don't explain it just right how it works. And I've taken a lot of heat, over the last few, years for not being right. And one way to solve that is to not deal with it. Just a second. Sorry about that. I got a text message. But it's going to hurt people that they do knowledge-based videos on how a gun works. What gun would be good for somebody that's looking for self-defense and things like that. And I think that this rule is going to actually affect them as well. We'll find out come April when it all fully gets put in place. But I had YouTubers I watched in the past. Of course, one of my favorites was arrested last year on drug charges, and that was FPSRussia. He was one of my favorite ones. One of my favorite people. He had fun. He showed you some of the things that he liked to do with firearms. And then, he would blow up zombies and watermelons. It was just, innocent, harmless fun, if you ask me. And those are the YouTubers I think that are going to be harmed here, as well as those that were selling things through their website, selling guns and stuff through their videos. To me, it's just censorship. And that's one thing I do not support. I do not support censorship of any kind. I understand, if you want to have age restrictions, I get that, but you should still be able to put your content out. I run into that problem here on YouTube. I can't even get monetized. Even when I had monetization, I couldn't get videos and recommendeds because they didn't want my content out sometimes, because I talk about some things sometimes that people just don't like. And yeah, that's what I was noticing. I was seeing a lot of people that were talking about that, about the YouTube policy. It looks like it will very likely affect gamers too, because especially with the first-person shooters and such out there, because it's going to depict, gun violence and things like that, and that's going to be a problem. And I think it's going to have to, Twitch is going to probably have to be the one to pick that up, and then people just have to go, people are not going to put their videos up as much, their live streams and such up with their videos on YouTube as much. And of course, with Fortnite being so big as of late, who knows, how that's going to, affect people doing that. I got a YouTuber that's just now starting to prepare. He's preparing to, to start live streaming his Fortnite playing and other video games. And that's Kid Behind a Camera. And he's talking about, about streaming and want to do it on YouTube, but the games he's wanting to play, like Fortnite, might not be, you might not be able to actually put them, live stream them or put them on YouTube at all. And so, yeah, there could be a very big effect on gamers and just, content creators in general, but definitely, gun enthusiasts as well as gamers could definitely be affected. So that's a good point right there. And then that takes me to some other changes that have taken place. Apparently, Congress passed a law last year restricting sex trafficking on websites because minors were affected. And that apparently has shut down the Craigslist personals. The thing is, the law was going to put not really restrictions, but make websites criminally liable, for people that put up ads on dating sites and things like that, for prostitution or sex trafficking in general. And a lot of that was because of children. I did a story here on the Big Rant Show about human sex trafficking, and it was very eye-opening, the research I did, and found out that a lot of the people that are involved, even here in the U.S., are children under the age of 13. And that's what a lot of that was about. And Craigslist was a huge spot on that. So I have a lot of people I saw on my social media freaking out over it and everything. And maybe it's censorship, maybe it's not, but at the same time, you have to protect the children somehow or another. And this is something that they're going to have that Craigslist had a choice. They could either moderate their website, where, see have someone watching the personals, or do some kind of other algorithm that could cut out, certain keywords, and realize, oh, if this is a bad one, we need to delete that one. There are websites I've been to where, people post photographs or whatever, and if it comes up something that they didn't want on the website, they have an algorithm that cuts it off. Or somebody watches it, like, YouTube's supposed to be doing their trending section. And so Craigslist had a chance. It's not like the federal government came in and said, oh, Craigslist, you have to close down. If you notice, Craigslist shut down. Reddit closed down some stuff on theirs. But not all of the apps and websites have. Take a look at Ashley Madison, for example. It's still there. It's a site that I don't really like at all, really, but it's still there. You've got Tinder. It's still there. All your dating sites and apps are still functioning. But it's Craigslist, I guess, because it was so kind of a autonomous kind of thing. There was no real rules on what anybody could put up, really, on Craigslist. It didn't seem. And I'm sure there's going to be some people around the internet, especially YouTube, that might lose a little money over this, like Joe Sanagato over there at his website, where he would do the idiots of the internet, and he gleaned a lot of his information, it seemed like, from Craigslist. So I wonder where he'll get his information from now. I guess you have to stick with Tinder and websites like that. And this takes me to my last topic that I'll cover here. I'm really sad that nobody, or that not only one or two people showed up. Thank you, Southside GA, for showing up and watching. This is my first try to do this, and so sorry if it seems a little wonky, a little weird. I guess you could say I'm a little nervous to do things live because I don't have the ability to, turn it off if I screw up. But I'll take you to the last bit of news that I have for you today, or something that the mainstream media didn't really cover a whole lot of, at least not from what I watched. I was sitting there watching the day after, and there wasn't a whole lot of conversation about it. But that was attack on Travis Air Force Base in California. Travis Air Force Base apparently sits about 55 miles to the northeast of San Francisco. And the other day, somebody was in a car loaded with apparently propane tanks, ran through the front gate, ended up crashing his car, which set the car on fire. And it could have really caused a lot of damage and could have actually killed people besides the driver. The driver, of course, passed away because he blew himself up in his car. Much like the Austin bomber from the last few weeks did the other day. But he breached security there, got through, and I guess we're going to have to do more to secure our bases. I mean, this is another attack, on a U.S. base. The guy's identity has not really been released. They haven't really put out much information. Last I checked, last I read about it was yesterday, so they could have come up with something since yesterday morning. But this is something that I think the mainstream media should have covered, and they didn't. They just didn't cover it very well at all. We'll talk about, they'll talk about bombings that happened, in the Middle East or other parts of the world. But what about an attempted bombing right here on our own soil? I don't know what we'll do, if there'll be any, changes to security protocols or anything like that at our military bases. But our military personnel need to be able to be safe on their bases. And we shouldn't have these terrorists coming in like this and trying to blow people up, which the FBI has said this does appear to be some kind of act of terrorism, and that we don't know what's, up next with that, really, what's going on with it. I hope that this is just a one-off thing, that, somebody lost their mind for a little bit and did something stupid. Our military personnel, they put their lives on the line every single day for us. And whether or not you agree with the wars or anything like that, these two, at least, I mean, these people put themselves out there to protect us and our rights and our freedoms every single day. And we shouldn't have people attacking them for just for doing their job. And that is really all I have for you for this particular live stream. Yeah, that's exactly where I heard about it too, was on Facebook at first. I mean, I spent my days on pretty much the three main websites, MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News, just to get information, along with some of the other websites I use. And the only place I heard about it was on Facebook. It was on Facebook, and that was only for a few minutes. And I saw it for about 5 or 10 minutes sitting in the trending section. And all of a sudden, I closed my browser. I came back about 10 minutes later, and it was gone. And so it's really sad how bad the mainstream media can be when it comes to covering things and picking and choosing what they cover. Anyhow, thank you to Southside GA for sitting with me here for those last almost 24 minutes now. Hopefully, these streams will become a little easier for me. I'll seem a little less nervous maybe by the next one. I plan to do another one next week, hopefully around the same time. We will see exactly what time that'll be. I got some new videos that'll be coming up the next few days here on the Big Rant Show. Follow up to one or two stories that I've done in the past, as well as some new stuff we have going on, like the budget that was just passed on Friday. Anyhow, have a great day. I'll see you down the road. And thanks for watching.